There is nothing wrong with your podcast audio feed. Do not attempt to adjust the volume. This is a full-blown flight alert. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, another episode of Flight Alert instead of an episode of Flight Box. Here's why. Because James Gunn decided to say some things at the Peacemaker Season 2 premiere last night. And sorry, he said one too many things for me to just gloss over. And I'm not waiting until Tuesday for the next episode of Flightcast to talk about this, because this, in my opinion, is a potentially massive deal. And what's hilarious about this is that when I look at the previous 7 episodes of Flight Alert that I've done to this point, I think only one of them is not James Gunn or DC Studios related. The first episode of this show was literally about Superman casting when it was still Superman Legacy. And then the second episode was about Superman Legacy casting, right? And then Rebel Moon, the Rebel Moon teaser trailer, that broke things up. Then we went back to Nicholas Hoult being cast as Lex Luthor. That was the 4th episode. Then the teaser trailer came out. That was the 5th episode of Flight Alert. Then the Superman and Ironheart double dose of trailers. That was Flight Alert 6. And then the fact that it was a DC Studios film was Flight Alert 7. And now here we are, Flight Alert episode number 8, and I'm still talking DC news. You know, it makes sense. Why does it make sense? Because DC is brand new right now. Like, we're not in a brand new place with Marvel. We're not in a brand new place with Star Wars or Star Trek or any other franchises. But we're in a brand new place with DC, and this is uncharted territory for us with respect to DC Studios, with respect to what James Gunn and Peter Safran are doing with the DCU. So, yeah, it's worthy of alert status for this. So, don't worry, I will get to Creature Commandos. Don't you worry, YouTuber who said, and I quote, "Please don't watch Creature Commandos. You'll hate DC if you do. It's horrible garbage. No real story, horrible characters. Just do yourself a favor and don't bother watching it. It doesn't even matter because nothing in the show is going to actually be pivotal to what's coming next." Yeah, that's a real comment from a YouTube comment section on the last episode where I talked about how I'm going to watch Creature Commandos, right? This was on the last episode of Flightcast over on Tuesday. And believe it or not, they got some replies fully disagreeing with what they said. And yeah, that's the most negative comment I've heard ever about Creature Commandos. And you know what? Maybe it's not that person's cup of tea. Whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm still going to watch it. Don't worry. I'm going to watch it and I'm going to talk about it probably now on Patreon before we start in on Peacemaker next week. But I got to talk about this. He said too much. James Gunn said way too much at the premiere to a couple of different sources that I got to talk about it. And you know what? Before diving headfirst into everything that he said, quick reminder, this show and all my other shows at theflightcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's the Flightcast YouTube page, like the commenter that's begging me not to watch Creature Commandos commented on. There's also Pandora and Spotify that you can find the Flightcast podcast at, or wherever you get your podcasts, whatever podcatcher you use. The main show is on Tuesdays. Thursdays is reserved for Flightbox and or Flight Alert. It's really a catch-all day that I can post whatever episode of a show that I'm going to record on this particular day. And then the weekend is for Flight Review and for Flight Chat, the feedback show. And we're having a Flight Chat episode for sure. And I may see a double feature tomorrow. I may see a couple of movies I'm going to review for Flight Review, but we're going to do all that over the weekend. So stay tuned for that at theflightcast.com or again, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, thank you to all the very loyal supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/theflightcast. Hope that you're enjoying the bonus content. I did post a new episode yesterday, a Flight Review episode, where I reviewed the documentary Adventures in the Making of Superman, the special documentary that they released to commemorate the digital digital release of Superman tomorrow, actually, on August 15th. And I watched the whole thing, talked in depth a bit more about some of the scenes that have been going viral, especially that big one that's been going viral, the argument, if you will. It wasn't really an argument. It really was not an argument. People are just framing that for clickbait. James Gunn and David Cornsweet were not arguing. They were passionately discussing, and I mean that I'm not playing semantics here. They were. If you watch the actual damn clip, it's a really organic, piece of extrapolation between the two with respect to how to play a very important, pivotally emotional scene in Superman at the climax of the movie. But I did a review on the whole documentary and how awesome it was, and observed a number of things with respect to DC Studios and the cast and crew for James Gunn that, I really think, lends, not only to how Superman was as well received as it was and as well put together as it was, but also in terms of the future, the potential future, the high hopes that I think a lot of us can have for the DCU being in James Gunn and Peter Safran's hands, to be honest with you. So check that out. Hope you're enjoying that. Thank you to those of you new subscribers, anybody that newly subscribed. Thank you to everybody that has been a longtime loyal subscriber of patreon.com/theflightcast. Cannot thank you enough for your support to the Flightcast on Patreon. All right, let's talk about what James Gunn has said in the last 24 hours with respect to DC. There are 3 articles that I'm going to reference here. One from Entertainment Weekly, one from Hollywood Reporter, and one from, of all places, Screen Rant. Yeah, I'm not really that big on Screen Rant. There's only ever been 2 writers, well, I guess in this case a third, because I actually do know the writer of this particular Screen Rant piece. There's really only been 3 Screen Rant writers that I've ever really messed with at all. Stephen Colbert, Andrew Dice, and Andy Beckbach, who is the writer of this particular piece. And I guess we'll start here because this one is directly related to Superman's digital release. And it's just James Gunn, it says, has a good reason for why Superman is coming to digital so soon. And he did give an actual reason with respect to it. And it logistically makes sense. It says, following the announcement of the digital release of DC Studios Superman, director James Gunn explains why the DC Universe movie is coming out early on VOD. 2025 became a great year for the Man of Steel in the world of cinema as the Superman movie brought the DC icon back for Gunn's new DCU franchise. After many positive reviews and a solid box office run, Superman's digital release date was recently announced, and it's way sooner than many were expecting. Yes, we talked about that. Thankfully, Gunn is finally explaining, it says, why Superman will become available through digital sooner rather than later. Screen Rant's own Liam Crowley interviewed Gunn for Peacemaker Season 2, where he spoke with the DC Studios co-CEO about Superman's early digital release announcement. When asked why Superman is getting such an early digital release, Gunn shared the following explanation that is related to the Peacemaker TV show itself. And I will just read the direct quote here from James Gunn. He says, well, it's very complicated, but the truth is, it is because of Peacemaker. I originally thought Peacemaker was going to be coming out next month. There was a lot of things that are beyond our control, so that Peacemaker is coming out now, and at the end of the day, I wanted everyone to be able to see Superman that wanted to, even those people who couldn't get to a theater before Peacemaker, and that's really the reason for it. End quote. It says that Peacemaker Season 2 will take place a month after the events of Gunn's DCU movie, as John Cena had a special cameo in the film as Christopher Smith, marking one of many Easter eggs and DC references in Superman. Several Superman characters like Frank Grillo's Rick Flag Sr. will be back for Peacemaker Season 2. And then Andy breaks down what he thinks the comments mean with respect to this. Says, while this is the first time that it has been mentioned that Peacemaker Season 2 was initially eyeing a September debut on HBO Max, Gunn's explanation is also a sign that DC Studios is leaning into the marketing of the DCU franchise. As Gunn has teased, there will be connectivity between Superman and Peacemaker Season 2. Having the movie available ahead of the HBO Max premiere is smart, he says. And he goes on to say, even though there were concerns about how this would affect Superman's box office performance for the remainder of its run, it's not stopping cinema goers from catching the film in theaters, as they may prefer to see big blockbusters like Gunn's film on the big screen. Given that Superman is already 2025's highest grossing superhero film, its early digital release is not going to hurt DC Studios at this point. That is quite true. And if you want to hear my comprehensive, evidence-based breakdown on why it's not going to hurt them, go back and listen to Flightcast earlier this week. A couple of days ago, I broke this down, and I gave examples from Warner Brothers' own record this year that prove why this isn't going to hurt Superman the way that so many people erroneously believe it's going to. In my opinion, erroneously believe that it's going to. This last part of Andy's story here on Screen Rant actually provides a great segue into the next thing that I want to talk about, because Andy says, after hearing Gunn's explanation about Superman getting an early digital release, it makes a lot more sense now why DC Studios made this decision with the additional context. Time will tell if Peacemaker Season 2 will feature David Corenswet's Man of Steel after the Superman post-credit scenes. I think I've also mentioned how that picture of Danielle Brooks with David Corenswet, where he's in full Superman garb, kind of gives me a real strong, nearly 100% indication that David Corenswet will be Superman in Peacemaker Season 2 at some point. Because she clearly was not visiting the Superman set, he was visiting the Peacemaker set. And they were shooting concurrently at the time. So, yeah, I think that's kind of an indicator there. But it says, as the Superman saga is just getting started, time will tell what other effects the movie will have on Peacemaker Season 2, hopefully. Following the success of Superman, more details about the hero's DCU future will be revealed sooner rather than later. Peacemaker Season 2 premieres on Thursday, August 21st on HBO Max. But wait a minute. What did Andy say? As the what is just getting started? The Superman saga? What on earth is the Superman saga? Well, to get that answer, we've got to move to the Hollywood Reporter piece written by Kirsten Chuba titled James Gunn Says Peacemaker Will Set Up Rest of the DCU and Teases When Next Story in His Superman Saga Will Begin Production. The showrunner and DC Studios co-head premiered the second season of Peacemaker alongside star John Cena in New York City. Yeah, okay, let's dig right into this and get an explanation on what just in the hell the Superman saga actually is. It says the second season of Peacemaker debuted in New York on Wednesday night, and James Gunn came ready to drop some hints on the show's role in the future of the DC Universe. The HBO Max series, which stars John Cena as the titular character and has Gunn as showrunner, is back for its second season 3.5 years after its first. It's been that long, hasn't it? 3.5 years, damn. With Gunn now co-head of DC Studios alongside Peter Safran. As a result, Season 2 will help lay out the pair's vision for what's coming up in the DCU. Quote, it's a big part. Definitely Superman leads directly into Peacemaker. It should be noted that this is for adults, not for children, but Superman leads into this show, and then we have the setting up of all the rest of the DCU in this season of Peacemaker. It's incredibly important, Gunn told The Hollywood Reporter on the carpet. Lots of guest stars coming up, he says. Lots of characters that are showing up that we've already met in Superman. I don't think there's anything that I've ever done that I love more than this season of Peacemaker, so I'm excited for people to see it. Now, I will say this, Gunn's PR, as far as like escalating, like, this is the greatest thing I've ever done, this is the greatest thing I've ever worked with, he's doing that pretty well, because he said that about Superman, and now he's saying that about Peacemaker Season 2, and it's like, okay, the next project, right, and like, keep it going, and you know, this is the last project that he'll necessarily be working on directly for at least a year that we will be seeing, because even though he is going to be like executive producer and like, you know, like franchise runner, like creative CEO over both Supergirl and Clayface, he's not writing or directing either of those. So this is like his last bit of PR that he's going to be doing, having a direct part to play creatively in this particular project, before he, you know, becomes like executive producer, like for the next year or so. But the article says Cena confirmed that this season is about furthering the narrative. Instead of standalone properties, all the DCU is now connected, as you saw Peacemaker show up in Superman. Cena says, I think what you see in Season 2 is just a forward of that narrative, that whole DCU through line. It takes the 11th Street kids through their next adventure, but it also has a lot to do with the DCU going forward. And of course, they're saying all this on the red carpet premiere, and of course, everybody's decked out in, you know, suit and tie and dresses and you know, formal wear, except for John Cena, who has done all of these appearances in costume as Peacemaker, right? Like he's wearing, like he's John Cena, but he's wearing the helmet and he's wearing the garb, the full uniform, right? Because that's just in character for what he's doing. It just completely makes sense. But here we go. Here's the meat of what we're talking about here. It says Gunn also gave a little tease for what's next after the success of Superman, which he wrote and directed, revealing, quote, I've already finished the treatment for the next story in what I'll call the Superman saga. The treatment is done, which means a very, very worked out treatment. I'm working on that and hopefully going into production on that not too far away from today, end quote. So there it is. The Superman saga, as he calls it. And I watched the clip where he actually said this out loud. The rest of this piece just says Peacemaker, which also stars Danielle Brooks, Jennifer Holland, Freddie Stroma, Steve McGee, and Frank Grillo, starts streaming August 21st on HBO Max. Gotcha. All right. But that's where we're at here. The Superman saga. Gunn has given it a name. And it's funny because I think it was Brooklyn Batman who posted a picture of, you guys have seen the meme of the man who's walking with his girlfriend or wife or whoever it is, but he turns back around to look at the woman walking past them, right? And of course, they usually like have a representation of what each of the three things are, right? So the guy in this case is Saga. The woman that he's walking with, his girlfriend, is Matt Reeves, and the woman he's looking back at, you know, like, wow, look at her, she's hot, is James Gunn, which I'm sure, you know, most of us, I think, would find that hilarious. I'm sure there's going to be some Batman fans out there, some fans of the Batman and the Penguin specifically, that are going to be a little irked by that, because they're not necessarily happy that those projects are essentially kind of being put on ice, you know, at least for now. I mean, we did hear that the Batman Part 2 is being worked on, is progressing forward because the script is finished. But with respect to sagas, right, are we moving away from the Batman epic crime saga and more towards this new Superman saga? Well, perhaps we are. But here's the deal. I've said this before, and I will continue to reiterate this. For Batman fans, whether they agree with me or not, we have nothing to complain about. I am a Batman fan. Batman is my favorite superhero of all time. I've made no bones about that. I love Batman. He's my absolute favorite. But as I have said many, many times at this microphone, on all of my shows, if I as I turn to the right and look at my Blu-ray library, not collection, library, and I stare at the shelf of Batman, cinematically in particular, that I have to admire, right? I have the Tim Burton films. I have the Joel Schumacher films. I have the Dark Knight trilogy. I have Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. I have the Batman. What do I have to complain about, cinematically speaking, as a Batman fan? Nothing. Not a damned thing. And that's what I say to all Batman fans out there that might be a little irked or highly agitated that it seems like perhaps Superman is getting top dog, top billing at this point. He deserves it. He does. Because he hasn't. In 47 years, Batman has gotten way more attention, way more cinematic attempts, way more cinematic, like, incarnations, right? As I've said before, six different Batman actors since 1989. Six, okay? We've had four, counting David Corenswet, four different Superman actors since 1978. And how many solo movies in the last? Look at the gaps between the solo movies, right? 19 years in between Superman 4: The Quest for Peace and Superman Returns. And Brandon Routh is supposed to be an iteration of Christopher Reeve, so we weren't even on a different incarnation of Superman technically at that point in time, right? And then another 7 years in between Superman Returns and Man of Steel, where we finally get a third actor playing Superman on the big screen in Henry Cavill, and then 12 full years from Man of Steel to this year, Superman, right? Before we get David Corenswet. Superman fans have been starved. Absolutely starved with respect to cinematic representation for their favorite superhero. Don't give me the TV stuff. Yes, I know, Tyler Hoechlin. Absolutely. Superman and Lois, fantastic for 4 seasons. Don't give me Tom Welling in Smallville. Yes, I know, 10 seasons of glory for the people that enjoy that show. And even people out there who enjoy Lois and Clark but despise Dean Cain because he's a prick. Yeah, I get it. Superman has been well represented on television, but not cinematically, not on the big screen. They haven't been able to walk into an IMAX theater very often in the last couple of decades and enjoy Superman on the big screen. Not the way that I've been able to enjoy the likes of Christian Bale and Ben Affleck and Robert Pattinson on the big screen for Batman. So cool your jets, Batman fans, if you have an issue with it. Superman is clearly front and center. There was even a clip, and I don't know what. This wasn't in the documentary, or if it was, I didn't catch it. But there's a special bonus featurette clip where James Gunn even comments on the fact that we've seen a lot more of Batman and Wonder Woman lately than we have of Superman. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. We talked about this on Squadcast Media about how you had to get Superman's house in order, and that is precisely what James Gunn is doing. He's now rebranded and rebooted the character for the general audience in a way, this particular Superman incarnation, based on audience appraisal, he is connected with the general audience in a way that the likes of which we've never seen, not even back to the Christopher Reeve days in this regard, right? Like, gone are the complaints, at least with this particular Superman, gone are the complaints of him being overpowered, boring, and unrelatable. That's over with, thanks to this new Superman film. So many people talking about how they were never fans of Superman beforehand, and now they are brand new fans of Superman going forward, right? So you set him up. You got Supergirl, right? You've got that movie coming out in June. That's in the can, in post-production as we speak. You've got whatever they're going to do with Krypto, right? Because Krypto now exists in this universe, and the mighty fine Krypto we have, in all of his misbehaved glory, if you will. And going forward now, James Gunn has got a new, very, very detailed treatment for the next Superman project, whatever that may be. And the fact that he's calling it the Superman Saga, yes, go ahead. He deserves it. Superman deserves it. As a Batman fan, I want Superman fans, especially Wally Mustafa, our resident Superman superfan. I want our Superman fans to finally feel the glory that us Batman fans have enjoyed for decades. Superman fans don't have a trilogy, right? And don't give me, no, if we're talking about the Christopher Reeve films, right? There are 4 films, but we all know how the majority of us feel about 3 and 4. I own all 4 of them. I have the Steelbook set. You can't own part of a set. But we all know how we feel about those 4 Christopher Reeve films. We love the first 2, and we got mixed bag to bad feelings about the last 2. We do. That's just where it is. It's all subjective. There are people who love those movies. No doubt about it. But my point is, Superman fans don't have a trilogy to hang their hat on like the Dark Knight trilogy. They don't have a whole lot of cinematic appraisal, like with respect to incarnations, right? The fact that and I've talked about this before, and Jared Cardos brought this up as well, and I love that he brought this up way back when. I forget what episode it was, but when we talked about how the landscape could have been really different if the Nick Cage Superman had actually happened, right? Past the beyond the CGI reference that we finally saw, come to life, if you will, in digitized form in the Flash, right? If that if we'd had another incarnation of Superman, like in between Christopher Reeve and Henry Cavill, then our perception of the character and all of these pissing contests that fans get into over the last 15, 20 years would have been very different, would have been framed extremely differently. But they can't be, because Superman has been sparingly used by Warner Brothers in the last 2 decades, and it's ridiculous. It's nonsense for a character of that stature. Superman is not as popular as Batman, but he should be closer than he is. Right, like there's Superman is like at the top of. I would say Superman's popularity, quite honestly, if I were to match Superman's popularity with like a Marvel character, I would say he's close to Iron Man. The only reason he's not at Iron Man's level is because the Marvel Cinematic Universe has elevated Iron Man that much higher. Right now, I would have said. In fact, I'll go ahead and say this is another comparison. We've talked about the beginning of franchises. I would put Superman's popularity at the popularity of Iron Man before the first Avengers film, right? But before Iron Man 3 made $1 billion. That's where Superman, this current DCU Superman, is at right now. And this Superman movie, has outgrossed the first Iron Man film, like with respect to the beginnings of the MCU in 2008. So more comparisons with that. But Superman should be higher than that. His popularity, globally speaking, and certainly domestically speaking, should be off the charts. And clearly he's more popular domestically right now than he is internationally. But we'll see how that changes down the road, and how the international markets shape up. A lot of it does depend on, global social political stuff that's going on right now. But either way, Superman deserves his day in the sun. So I welcome the Superman saga with open arms. And yes, I would like to see more development on that before seeing development on the Batman Epic Crime Saga. I would. I'm not saying I'm tossing aside the Batman Epic Crime Saga. If it happens, it happens. But that shouldn't be the priority for DC, in my opinion. With all due respect to Matt Reeves, with all due respect to everybody involved with the Batman and the Penguin, it is Superman's time to shine. This was the year of Superman. They dubbed 2025 the year of Superman, and so far it has been the year of Superman. Even with 3 Marvel movies in the landscape, this has been the year of Superman, and the marketing continues. And my goodness, another round of applause, another tip of the cap to DC Studios for their marketing approach. I mean, we talked about this on Vodka Stream. They just have not stopped. It has been a freight train just continuing to roll and roll, and now it's kind of a snowball effect, right? We are rolling right from Superman into Peacemaker Season 2, and Gunn says it's important for world building, if you will. And I know what some of you are going to say, like, all right, here comes the beginning of the homework problem, because he's telling us that Peacemaker Season 2 is so important. No, he's not saying that. What he's saying is that it's going to introduce and reintroduce characters that are active in the DCU. It's going to set the table for how the DCU operates. It's going to be a world builder of a show for the DCU. That does not mean it's going to be required viewing for the rest of the DCU. It does not mean that you're going to have to watch this show in order to understand Supergirl or Clayface or any other projects down the road. It does not mean that. He still has the opportunity to build out this cinematic universe without forcing us into a homework problem. If he just sets the table and goes, hey, this character's here, this character's here, that character's there, this place is here, this place is there, and that's all he's doing with Peacemaker Season 2 while telling the story of the 11th Street Kids, like for this particular season, that's not a homework problem. That's just simply, hey, this world has this, that world has that. And either way, the general audience isn't going to care. We know this, because the general audience does not care about the homework problem and continuity nearly the way that we fans do. We are the ones that always stress over that. But the fact of the matter is, he's hyping us up for Peacemaker Season 2 and telling us that we're going to see guest stars, we're going to see cameos, we're going to see people and events and locales and a world built throughout Season 2 of this show. So that's what I'm excited for, and the fact that there is a Superman saga now in development, yes, 100% bring it on. Superman fans deserve this moment in the sun. They deserve to be put front and center with their character on the big stage. They 1000% deserve it. I really do hope David Cornsweet is in season 2 of Peacemaker, and I really do hope that we do get that development. And I know there's been talk of a sequence, a shot, if you will, with respect to the Superman documentary I mentioned earlier that might tease a Superman villain potentially. And I would say this, yeah, we're going to see that villain. For people who have seen it, yeah, go look for it. In fact, go check out my buddy Ben Everts at Real Anarchy, because he did a clip on it on TikTok, and I think he might have also posted it to his YouTube. He did a clip on it with respect to a particular villain. You know what? I'll just go ahead and say it. Brainiac. Brainiac. Like, there's a clip, like one of the actual like devices that is used in this Making Superman documentary is hand-drawn pictures by James Gunn of things that he talks about, with respect to building out the DCU and whatnot. And there's an image of the Super Family, right? An image of Superman, Supergirl, and Krypto, and, together as a Super Family. And then right below that is an image of what appears to be someone with like 3 like holes in his head, like protruding holes, if you will, that may or may not make up a Coluan symbol. How do I know that? Well, not from the comics. I know that thanks to Krypton and also Supergirl, because there have been Brainiac occurrences in both of those shows, and also Superman the Animated Series as well. But yeah, of course we're probably going to see Brainiac. Why wouldn't we? Because remember, James Gunn is intent on showing us things that we have not seen with respect to Superman on the big screen. And have we seen Brainiac yet? No, we haven't. Closest we've gotten is the low-rent Brainiac that Richard Pryor built in Superman 3. Yes, it's a low-rent Brainiac. That's something that I talked about when we reviewed it over at Squadcast Media. That's the closest we've gotten to seeing Brainiac on the big screen. So we're going to see real Brainiac. I don't know when. I'm not sure if it's part of this new Superman Saga treatment or not. Maybe it is. Maybe that's an indicator from Gunn that we're going to see that villain pop up, right? Because we already did the Lex Luthor story in this particular film. All right, great. Now are we going to bring the otherworldly threat? Yes, sure, why not? Which otherworldly threat are we going to bring? Well, we don't need to bring Zod. We've already seen Zod twice on the big screen, right? We don't need to bring Doomsday, not just yet, because, I can only imagine the complaints. It's too soon. It's too soon for Doomsday. Yeah, okay, fine. It's too soon for Doomsday. We're probably not going to see him until way down the road, if that's even part of James Gunn's plan for the first 10 years of the DCU. But Brainiac? Oh, we absolutely could see Brainiac. There's no question about it, because we haven't seen Brainiac on the big screen yet, other than the low-rent, cheap, bastardized version I talked about that Richard Pryor's Gus Gorman built in Superman 3, right? That's the closest that we've gotten to it. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. Not a guarantee, but certainly would not surprise me at all. But either way, the Superman saga is coming. The Superman saga is in development, and I am looking forward to it. And I absolutely do feel that should be DC Studios' priority at this point, as far as building up Superman finally the way that he was always meant to be built up for the Superman fandom, so that his popularity and his fandom can reach a portion of the general audience, surpassing that of Iron Man and getting to where he should be, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of popularity in that regard. And again, I only use Iron Man as a reference because if we're talking about Batman and Spider-Man being the god tier popularity, Superman should be closer to them. Maybe he's not quite on the god tier level, but he should be closer in popularity as far as the general audience is concerned. And if Warner Brothers hadn't mismanaged him so badly in the last 47 years of like cinematic adaptations, he would be closer. But now James Gunn has an opportunity to finally push him closer and popularize Superman in the same way that Iron Man went from being a D-lister on the Marvel Comics like spectrum as far as fandom up to where he's at now in terms of being revered by MCU fans. So yeah, looking forward to that. But now I'm going to talk about the thing that James Gunn said that really seriously got me, like I lost my shit almost when I saw this, because seriously, it did. Don't toy with me, James Gunn. Don't toy with me. And if you know already what I'm about to talk about, then more power to you. But here's the deal. Sydney Bucksbaum writes this piece for Entertainment Weekly titled, James Gunn Addresses Margot Robbie's Place in New DC Universe. Plus, the co-head of DC Studios said he wants to bring back Idris Elba as Bloodsport. All right, let's just put the subhead I read aside for just a second. I will address that too. Let's get to this headline. It says, could Margot Robbie return as Harley Quinn in James Gunn's new DC universe, or have this bird's wings been clipped? How dare you? How dare you suggest the latter? Whatever. It says the new co-head of DC Studios alongside Peter Safran has been busy rebooting the comic book company's on-screen world with an entire slate of movies and shows that kicked off with last month's Superman, written and directed by Gunn. Now there's a new Superman, David Corenswet, a corporate justice gang instead of the Justice League, and ultimately a new Wonder Woman and Batman who have yet to be cast, in addition to Robert Pattinson returning for the Batman Part 2. So will there be a new Harley Quinn as well, or will Robbie return to play the fan-favorite character in the future? Quote, that will be revealed down the line, Gunn tells Entertainment Weekly. While Gunn remained tight-lipped on further explanation, he did reveal another Suicide Squad member he's keen to bring back for this new age of DC. Quote, I definitely am always looking for a place to put Bloodsport and figuring that out, Gunn says of Idris Elba's Ruthless Mercenary from the 2021 sequel, so we'll see what happens. And then the piece says, next up in Gunn's revamped DC universe is Peacemaker Season 2, which heavily ties into the events of the Suicide Squad. Rick Flag Sr., Frank Grillo, becomes head of Argus and uses his new power to get revenge for the death of his son Rick Flag Jr., Joel Kinnaman, who was killed by Peacemaker, John Cena, at the end of the movie. It's not hard to imagine both Harley and Bloodsport fitting into that story since they ultimately bonded and became friends after Rick Jr.'s death. Robbie has portrayed Harley Quinn in 3 films, 2016 Suicide Squad, 2020's Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, and 2021's The Suicide Squad. Meanwhile, Lady Gaga played a different version of the role in last year's Joker Folie à Deux opposite Joaquin Phoenix. I still haven't watched that movie. I still have not seen that movie. I own that movie. I blind bought it, but I still have not watched it yet. I will, and I'll do a FLITE review episode on Patreon at some point. But here's a quote. It says, it was kind of back-to-back filming Birds and filming Suicide Squad, so I was kind of like, oof, I need a break from Harley because she's exhausting, Robbie previously told Entertainment Weekly. I don't know when we're next going to see her. I'm just as intrigued as everyone else. Now, this quote, that particular quote from Margot Robbie, is 4 years old. That was published on July 12th, 2021, right? This is right after the Suicide Squad, debuted. Remember the day and date release? You could see it in theaters, or you could do what I did and watch it on HBO Max. So that's a 4-year-old quote. All right. Obviously, Margot Robbie has gone on to do Barbie since then, and I don't know the last thing that she did. I'm not sure what her last cinematic role was. In fact, here, let's look that up real quick. What's she done lately? Other than have a baby, because she totally has a child now. So it says she's produced a couple of films, My Old Ass and Borderline. She was an executive producer on Borderline. It also says that she's playing a character, Sarah, in a movie called The Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, which is an upcoming American romantic fantasy directed by Kogonada and written by Seth Rice, starring Margot Robbie, Colin Farrell, Kevin Kline, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, which I guess is set for a 2025 release. And then she's also in post-production on a version of Wuthering Heights. All right, so of course she's still acting. Has she been in any television lately? Apparently she was in Sirens. But again, that's producer only. That's a miniseries. But either way, all right. So clearly, her career is still ahead of her. Barbie was her big, huge, massive success, $1 billion earned for Warner Brothers as the title character in that film, and they're probably still working out a sequel with respect to that. Look, she needs to be part of the DCU as far as I'm concerned. Because here's the thing. I remember when the Suicide Squad came out 4 years ago, and my initial thought on that movie was, I said, James Gunn, listen, I have one non-negotiable. Because we were all trying to figure out, okay, who's he bringing from the David Ayer film, right? Who's he bringing from Studio Squad? What characters is he flipping over? We knew he wasn't bringing Deadshot, right? We knew Will Smith wasn't going to be a part of it, right? And there were a couple of others that we knew weren't going to be a part of it either. But he brought over, my non-negotiable at the time was Viola Davis as Amanda Waller. It's like, no, you can't ditch her. She's the perfect Waller. She did a phenomenal job. You've got to bring her over. And he did. Not only did he bring Viola Davis over as Waller, but he also put her in Peacemaker Season 1. And the Waller series, I think, is still in development. He hasn't said a whole lot about it other than wishing Viola Davis a happy birthday and posting a picture of Amanda Waller, her as Amanda Waller, on Threads a couple of days ago or last week, whenever her birthday was, right? That's the most recent thing I've heard him say about Waller. But Waller was a show that he did announce initially in the slate, and we haven't heard that it's been shelved or pushed aside or whatever, right? And out of bio, Danielle Brooks's character in Peacemaker being her estranged daughter, that tracks, right? She's cemented. There's absolutely a window, and a definitive intention for Viola Davis's Amanda Waller to be a part of the DCU. Awesome. And I love that Flo Crowley is also cemented, right? Like she was the Argus agent that knocked her out at the end of the movie, and now she's the director of the FBI, like rebuffing Lex Luthor's Planet Watch initiative at the beginning of Superman. So that's cool, right? We've got those threads, right? The whole Rick Flag thing, right? Like that's there, plus Peacemaker, right? We've got those connecting threads already to the Suicide Squad movie. And as much as the Suicide Squad is technically a DCEU film, it's so standalone, similar to Blue Beetle, that it could absolutely, you could carry over a great deal of that into the DCU. And I want that to happen. And I want Margot Robbie to be a part of that, because I said years ago that Margot Robbie could be to Harley Quinn as Hugh Jackman is to Wolverine. She could literally play that, and now I can say this, she could play that role till she's 90. Seriously. Like, she could be the cinematic Harley Quinn for a long time. And I get it. There's opportunities for other actresses to be Harley Quinn. But come on, man. She's like, at this point, kind of the definitive Harley. And there's no reason, the way that her character is orchestrated, tell me the reason that she wouldn't fit in the DCU. Like, the test on whether or not she would fit in the DCU was whether or not she fit in Gunn's Suicide Squad movie. And she did. Perfectly. She's already worked with him. The relationship is there. So I'm hoping that this whole that will be revealed down the line means that she's also in Peacemaker season 2. Hopefully she is one of the guest cameos that we see. Hopefully it is established that the Harley Quinn of the DCU is Margot Robbie. I want to see that continue. Well, Ray, that's not fair. Don't you want to see another actress get the role? Margot had 3 cracks at it. Yeah, 3 cracks at it, right? The first crack she had at it was in a studio mangled film that we still haven't seen the true version of from David Ayer, right? The second one was Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn, which even though I thoroughly enjoyed that movie, much misaligned or maligned, I should say, from a number of fans who didn't necessarily care for it, and it came out just before the pandemic crippled the world, so it wasn't really a full reveal for her. And the Suicide Squad, that was part of the day and date stuff, right? Like, I think she's been strong as Harley in all 3 of those movies, but this is an opportunity for her to continue that. And she had designs on this, right? Her and her production company, Lucky Chat, they had designs on this being the case, and her continuing as Harley down the road. When she said 4 years ago that she didn't know, it was because it was up in the air. She didn't know. Like, what was going on with DC Films was completely, like, no one knew. It was absolutely nebulous what direction they were going in, because Walter Hamada and Toby Emmerich did not have a plan. They were throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck in that regard, right? So now, with DC Studios existing, and with the creative head of it being the guy that last directed her as Harley Quinn, there is an opportunity for her to join a DC universe that has a damned plan, that actually has a through line, that actually has some creative juice and backbone to it. How about it, James Gunn? Seriously, I hope that you are being mum about this because she's already a part of it. That you've already filmed this cameo in secret somewhere, and, John Cena and others have been sworn to secrecy, and Robbie knows about it, and she's waiting for the moment to reveal it when we all see it in a flippin' episode. I know I'm getting my hopes up. I know that. I realize that it's very possible that she could say she's done with it and she's moving on, or that James could be moving on and doing something different. But I am still holding out hope that because of his experience with her on the Suicide Squad, that he is going to bring her into this DCU. And look, recast Joker. Listen, I like Jared Leto's Mob Boss Joker, and I don't care. Recast Joker. Go ahead. Recast Joker. You don't need to bring him back, right? And so I'll go ahead and eliminate that for anybody that argues, well, if you bring her back, then you got to be... No, you don't. You didn't even put Leto in Birds of Prey, right? There's a Joker scene and Joker references, and we see the Joker at one point, but he never turns his head. It doesn't need to be Jared Leto. It can absolutely be a different Joker. No, it doesn't have to be one with a damaged tattoo. You can go more classic or whatever route they want to go in, right? Like, you can recast Joker. I don't care. Go ahead and do that. Like that. I doubt Margot Robbie will have an issue with that, okay? If this comes to fruition. But that's my hope right now, is just bring her over. Bring her Harley Quinn. Bring her definitive cinematic Harley Quinn into the DCU. That's what I have hope for, yes. And yeah, I am just a little more hopeful about that than I am about Idris as Bloodsport. But don't get me wrong, I would love for Idris to come back as Bloodsport, because that's cool. I like the idea of Idris Elba being part of DC. I like that. When big stars like become part of my favorite like franchises, like for comic books or science fiction or whatever, like that's cool, right? Whenever a favorite actor or an actor that I really like respect, gets into Star Trek, I was like, oh, all right, awesome, they're part of the franchise. It's great. It's the same with comics. It's the same with like DC. It's like, okay, new actor comes into DC, or even a new actor that goes into Marvel. It's like, hey, now they're part of the franchise. Now they're part of this, big huge family talking about these characters and these heroes and whatnot. I don't know, corny or not, I just think that's awesome. And so Idris being a part of the DCU after he was already an awesome part of the Suicide Squad, yes, absolutely bring Idris Elba back as Bloodsport, and go ahead and retcon the whole kryptonite bullet thing. Like, certainly, like that can be done, or have the kryptonite bullet thing occur. Right? Maybe he shoots David Cornsweet with a kryptonite bullet. Perhaps that occurs. I don't know, but either way, if he's actively looking, if Gunn is saying I'm actively looking for a way to bring Idris back as Bloodsport, great, fantastic, I love that. But that's another through line, right? So to me, it's like, okay, you got all these threads, you got all these through lines from the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker that you're bringing into the DCU. Just go ahead and bring another big one in. Go ahead and bring in Margot, right? Hopefully, this is all academic, and in a matter of weeks, we will find out definitively that yes, it is happening, right? Look, again, I realize that I'm getting my hopes up. I realize I could be setting myself up for disaster. I could be setting myself up for disappointment because maybe she's done with the role. Maybe he has already recast to Harley and that's what he's talking about. That will be revealed down the line, right? But he didn't flat out shoot it down. He didn't flat out say, oh, we've moved on from Margot. No, he kept it open. He kept it wide open because I think even he understands, he realizes, hey, that's one that we're paying attention to as far as carryovers, right? Look, we understand, like, us fans, if we're being honest, we understand, look, the Justice League has been retconned. Justice League is absolutely being retconned. You already recast Superman. You're going to recast Batman. You're going to recast Wonder Woman. Yes, totally understand. The Trinity is getting replaced, and then you will fill out the ranks of whatever Justice League you're going to build down the road for your DCU. Okay, totally get that. Makes sense. But as far as all of your other characters that don't necessarily have this absolute devout connection to the previous DCEU, have at them. Go right ahead. Bring them in. Do what you got to do, because the sky's the limit as far as that is concerned. And again, the Suicide Squad was enough of a standalone movie, even within the DCEU, that he can do that. He most certainly can do that, and I hope he does. I really hope he does. With all the threads that he's already carrying over, what's one more jester to bring in? Yes, that is my hope. That is my ultimate hope. And yeah, I'm greedy, but bring her and Idris back. Bring Harley, bring Margot as Harley, and Idris as Bloodsport back. Yes. Why the hell not? He can do whatever he wants. He's the boss. He's the creative boss of DC Studios. And he can get Peter Safran to get on board with that. He can be like, hey, listen, big star potential, right? We remember the $1 billion she made for Barbie, and they'll market the hell out of that. They will. They will market the hell out of that, and it could be awesome, right? Like that. The possibilities here for the DCU are exciting. They are. Now, this is at the point now where, you remember I said going into Superman, it was cautious optimism, bordering on hype. Well, now it's full-blown hype. I saw Superman 4 times in the theaters, and I'm not pre-ordering the digital copy because on September 23rd, when my 4K Steelbook arrives, it will have a digital code with it, right? So I won't miss out on the special features that apparently are going to be digital only, which is bullshit that they're not putting a ton on the discs, but whatever, it's the wave of what they're doing. Okay. Either way, I will get my digital copy when I get my physical copy next month, right? I am now in hype mode with respect to DC Studios and the DCU because Superman pleased me that much, to where I think that and Man of Steel are my tandem of best Superman movies made to date, right? So now we're in hype mode. Now it's escalation. Now I'm thinking about what could be awesome, but I'm obviously going to level set my expectations, and I'm going to respect the creative freedom of James Gunn. If he has made a decision to recast Harley, okay, I'll be disappointed as a fan, but I'm not going to take that out on him or on whoever the new Harley actress is. If he does bring her back as Harley, I will applaud him and say that is a damn smart move. Yes, fantastic. Of course, it's all subjective. That is how I will feel. You can agree or disagree with me at your leisure. You know how this works, but that is how I feel. And so here's hoping, fingers crossed, that at some point, amidst all the cameos, when we see David Cornsweet at some point in Peacemaker Season 2, when we see others, hopefully one of the people that we see or is alluded to is in fact Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. Here's hoping, fingers crossed. We'll see. All right. had to talk about that. That was the biggest part of this that I really needed to record and get my thoughts out. Because, like I said, I wasn't waiting for the next episode of Flightcast to talk about this. I wasn't even going to wait for any of you guys to send me an email about it on Flight Chat. I'm like, nope, I'm talking about it now. I'll put Creature Commandos aside, watch that later. I'm talking about this right now. Right damn now. So, there you have it. And that officially concludes this episode of Flight Alert, yet another alert about DC Studios and the DCU. Thank you so much for listening to this show. Thank you so much for following my ramblings and hearing me wax poetically about stuff that I wish would happen, but will respect if it doesn't. That type of deal. If you have any thoughts on anything that I'm talking about here, if you have any thoughts on what James Gunn has said about the future of the DCU, about the Superman saga, and about the potential of Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn or Idris Elba's Bloodsport coming back, or any other thoughts that you have with respect to DC Studios, the DCU, or movies, TV, and other sort of media in general, and you want to join the Flight Chat, you know where to find me on Threads and Instagram at the Flightcast. There's the Flightcast YouTube page where you can comment right underneath the posting for this particular episode. I'm also on BLUESKY at Flightcast. There's the Flightcast Facebook page as well. And of course, I can always be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. All right, take care, stay safe out there, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.